All right. Hello, my name is Christopher Fisher, and in fulfillment of our superintendent practicum, this is my third interview, interviewing Dr. Ronnie Knox, the superintendent for the Sam Houston State University Charter School. Uh, at this time, I'll give Dr. Knox an opportunity to go ahead and kind of describe his campus, give us an introduction to himself, his motivations, and then we'll go ahead and start with the outline of where we're going to answer our interview. But I want to thank you beforehand, Dr. Knox, to come in and allowing us to have this interview. It's really appreciated.
Oh, yeah, certainly, Chris. It's a pleasure. Well, I'm Ronnie Knox. I've been at the university for 6 years now. I'm in my 36th year of education, and I'm very proud to say that I was part of the founding of Sam Houston's charter school. We're a very unique entity in the state. In fact, I think we're the only one that holds a charter like this. One, there's only nine universities that hold charters K-12 in the state, and Sam Houston is one. But our charter is based on the fact that we are actually housed in child care centers. Some are privately owned, some are publicly owned, and we wanted to create what's known as a flow-through model. So you can put a child in daycare at 6 weeks old, and then according to state rules, they can stay there full time until they're in pre-K, and then they're ready to transition through kindergarten, or they can attend after school programs up until they're 12 years old. And so what we decided to do was let's partner with these community child care centers and see what it would look like if a child got to stay full time in that school from basically almost birth through the fifth or sixth grade. And we're in our fifth year of operation. We've held the charter for 6 years. There's a 0 year built in that you can get everything created. I'm very proud to say that last year we went through our charter renewal, and we've been chartered for an additional 10 years. And so it looks like there's some permanency to our charter school. We currently have 3 campuses, hope to open a fourth campus in July of 2022. We have 433 students. We're chartered, and I'll never see this fruition of it, but we're chartered to have 24 sites throughout the greater Houston area and 2,400 students. And so whoever takes over for me will be able to fill those other uh, numbers up and get us going and keep this entity going. Uh, Besides trying to create that flow through model, we wanted to create a best practices kind of lab schools for our district partners in traditional K through 12 learning. Also wanted to set up a place where our professors, not just from the College of Education, but other colleges at the university, could come down and have hands-on research with our students, and our parents understand as part of becoming part of the SHSU charter school. Research is what we do, and so they are aware of that, and they enjoy some of the findings that we're finding there as well. All of our teachers are certified in the state of Texas. I'm proud to say many of them are SHSU alum, and many are from the greater Houston area. This past year, we started a partnership with the EDAD program at the College of Ed with SHSU, where students entering into their senior year uh, can forego their student teaching and student teaching prep course by working for us as a paraprofessional for a year. And they basically are doing teaching, they're just getting paid for it.
Oh, wow.
And we've been very pleased with the not only level of maturity that the students were getting from SHSU, are bringing, but their depth of knowledge of best practices in the classroom. And so they've shared with some of our veteran teachers that may be a little scared of the technology. They've gotten right in and showed them. And then, of course, some of our veteran teachers have been able to show them how to do classroom management, which is so important for a beginning teacher. And so I'm excited about what we built here with the help of the university. We couldn't have done it without their both moral and financial support.
And I think that brings me right to this next question. I know that this is a unique charter, and with that coming as your executive role, can you describe how your executive role as a superintendent within a charter, within a university, the hierarchy, the expansion, and some of the roles and responsibilities that you have?
Yeah, sure. And I'll compare it to my role in a traditional K-12
Awesome.
as a at the central office level as a superintendent. In a traditional K-12, the superintendent usually is the guy that runs the district at the 360-foot level. You know, he's not the CFO, he's not the CNI director, he's not the special ed director. He's managing those people. In our charter school, I actually am the special ed director and I am the 504 coordinator. I am not the CFO, but I work very closely with the CFO who is loaned to us from the university accounting. I am the guy that handles a lot of the discipline. And then I have a principal who is also our bilingual coordinator. She's our district testing coordinator. She handles our behavior students. I mean, so in a charter school, you have to wear a lot of different hats because although we're much smaller, and I always tell people, you know, compare us at 433 students to a Conroe ISD that has close to 72,000, you know, they have a lot more people than we do, of course, but we still have to do all the same accountability and programming and everything that they have to do. So even my teachers have to take on multiple roles. And I find that keeps me fresh in the fact that I'm up to date on special ed law. I'm up to date on House Bill 3. I'm up to date on best practices in the classroom with elementary students. So by being small, I've been able to have my hands on a lot more of the steering wheels that cause our district to operate. The other thing about a charter school is that we are not bound by some of the traditional unflexibility that some of the K-12 is. Now, we still have to teach the TEKS. We still are responsible for STAR. But we have a flexible schedule, so where we don't run a bell schedule. So if my teacher is teaching English and she's not finished with her lesson at 10 o'clock, when it's time to transition to math, she can just keep on teaching the English. She doesn't have to fit into a mold. We are a very project-based. So whatever we're talking about in theory, the kids actually produce at the end of the week through STEM projects or something like that, so that they can see a 3D representation of the theoretical. And want lots of hands-on activities. We are very, very, very anti-worksheet. If I walk into a room and I see a worksheet, the teacher has a lot of explaining to do, simply because worksheets are the lowest level of comprehension. And to get our students ready for the STAR and even achieve above that, you've got to have analysis, you've got to have synthesis, application, and only that can be done through a project-based model. My other role as executive or working with a university charter is I'm also a professor at the university. So if you can think of a teaching load as a 4-4, 3/4 of my teaching load is the charter school, And the other fourth is I am a professor in the Ed Leadership Superintendent program. And so I've been doing the finance courses for both the superintendent and principal courses for the last 6 years as well. So that's a little unique in that I wear two hats on that. And then my role in the community. Of course, I'm always representing the charter school in the greater Houston area, but I'm also a representative of Sam Houston State University everywhere I go. And, it helps for recruiting. I do have some of my parents that ask me all the time, if we go to the charter school, do we get to go to the university? And I say, yes, but it's not free. you do have to pay for the university. I can't grant you free. But my other roles as an executive at the Region 6 Educational Service Center, I serve as the Charter School Board of Trustees representative for the Board of Directors for the Service Center. I also serve as the president of a school that's in formation of charter schools called Thrive Center for Success. And it is focused on students with autism. And it's scheduled to open in fall of 2022. And I serve as the president of the Board of Trustees because as a professor, we have several criteria that we have to do, and one of them is community service. And so that is my outreach way to meet our motto of the measure of a life is its service. Well, I help this charter school actually from the initial application phase to getting it approved by TEA. And then I was honored to be asked to serve as their first board president. And so I get to wear a lot of hats, get a lot of opportunities as a superintendent.
And kind of building upon that, you acknowledged that there were multiple hats that you wore, but also within those hats there were certain implications or certain forefronts that have really far implications to the legislature that we've seen coming out, especially with dyslexia, autism, and those types of situations. Do you find that your role as an executive with research, with being a professor, with the regional service center, do you find that there are political implications that pull you in certain directions or have an effect on your role and your ability to put that out?
Yeah, great question. Yes, and of course, I always share, even in my classes, that I have to be very definitive about this is Dr. Ronnie Knox's opinion, not necessarily the opinion of Sam Houston State University, or not necessarily the opinion of Region 6 Education Service Center, and not necessarily the charter school. But by being in those different entities, I get to see the lawmaking process from a whole different set of eyes, Of course, when I was in a traditional K-12, I was a member of the Texas Association of School Administrators, or TASA, which is a superintendent lobbying professional organization. And I saw it from, an executive leadership level. As a charter school, I see it from a different perspective in that, there's a huge amount of students waiting to get into charters. I think the last time the wait list of students trying to get into charters was over close to 140,000. And so there's some political footballs that are always thrown back and forth between traditional K-12s and charter school K-12s. And it seems like it's getting more and more evolved. And then as lawmakers make laws such as the Dyslexia Handbook, my job is to try to absorb what the law says and break it down into lay terms so parents can understand it. And sometimes there's things in there that I agree with, and sometimes things I don't. But I always tell my staff, we can complain about the law all we want, but we still have to follow it, and that's where our accountability piece comes in. And I'm a big proponent of accountability. And there's an adage out there: everybody's for accountability until they're the ones held accountable. But I know that it's easy to get upset with the Texas Education Agency, but by serving in the various roles I've had, when you look at them, they're really just the compliance people. They're not making the laws. They're just making sure that everyone is complying with the laws. So as a superintendent, it taught me the power of having a relationship with your legislators and who represents your district in Congress and who represents your district at the state level, and making sure they know that, hey, it's not okay to do away with the truancy law, or, hey, we need more help in special ed. You need to put more funding there. Or, of course, what we're going through now with COVID, hey, we need some help with the attendance funding because everyone's attendance is down. Let's take a look at how we're going to do that. And I belong to an organization because if my legislature or my legislator hears from me 100 times, well, that's just Dr. Knox. He's just on a bandwagon. But if my legislator hears from 100 people one time on one subject, he's going to go, oh, wow, that's 100 people that vote for me. Maybe I ought to pay a little more attention. And what I have always discovered when you talk about education in the state of Texas and politics is I don't think our teachers quite understand the authority that as a group they can wield when it comes to politics. There are over 3 million either certified teachers, paraprofessionals, administrators, bus drivers, cafeteria workers in the state of Texas. That is a significant voting block. And if we could ever all get on the same page, I think you'd see a lot more school-friendly, employee-friendly legislation coming out. But we often remain silent or mute on some of the most important facts that affect our jobs, And so I've learned that process, even the process of making a law, is messy and ugly. But in the end, if you want something that you feel is good for kids, you can't be on the sidelines, And so I've learned how to communicate with our legal reps. I've learned how to get out in front of proposed laws and say, this is how it would not only affect us, but affect the entire education community. And legislators will listen to you. Of course, the most powerful group in education is not the teachers or the administrators or the bus drivers or paraprofessionals. It's parents. And legislators will always listen to parents above everyone else, because those parents are really the ones that they're not really coming with an agenda. They're not coming with, well, that's my job or anything. They're coming with, I'm giving you the most precious commodity I have, my child. And I want you to take good care of him or her. And you're seeing a lot of the politics, Chris, right now in board of trustee meetings. We're dealing with, gender neutrality. We're dealing with critical race theory. We're dealing with the books that are on the shelves in libraries, and are they appropriate for students? I just heard an NPR report last week talking about book reviews, and it was very interesting that one book called Twisted, and I haven't read it, but it's a teen age girl, so it's focused more towards teenage adolescents. That book in this one library in Texas school district had only been checked out 3 times in the last 6 years. Not a big, I mean,
Right.
who knows it's there? But a parent brought it to the school board and wanted it taken off the shelves, and
Yeah,
now
I'm
there's
sure
a waiting list
to
for
get the
that book that's
book.
25 weeks long. And so I always tell my students, I always tell my teachers, let's always be careful we don't cut off our nose to spite our face, okay? You know, so, but politics is always going to be part of education. You know, I've been in it long enough to know it's all cyclical. And so the things that we're fighting today, we fought all the way back in the early 80s when I started. They're just couched different, they look different, have a different name, but it's still what's best for kids.
Right.
And how do we get to that goal of what's best for kids?
And speaking of what's best for kids and staff and everyone involved, as well as tying into the legislation, I know a lot of the legislation we've seen come down over the last couple of years has been towards school safety, emergency situations, and crisis situations, as well as COVID response. So I want to kind of take a little time to bend your ear and get your perspective on how is you as an how do you as an executive view the crisis control and crisis awareness in your district? What is your role? How do you develop and formate the crisis plan, and how is that taken out? I know you were in a very unique situation, so I would love to see that versus your experiences in a traditional K-12 district.
You bet. You bet. Well, in a traditional K-12 as a superintendent, you know, I was basically the chief executive officer, but I had people underneath me that did our school safety audits, handled our emergency plans, made sure that our rallying points were all taken care of. We always prepped for a pandemic. We even had a that said, you know, if a pandemic breaks out, especially when H1N1 broke out and SARS broke out in the 90s, you know, of course, that was over in China and never really, but we had that. No one ever thought we would actually have to open the book up and see what it says in there, you know. But right after Columbine, and I was a high school principal during Columbine, threats on campus became much more looked at. You know, I can remember back in the early 80s, I would get a bomb threat, and usually it was boyfriend trying to get girlfriend out of school. So let's just call in a bomb threat, you know. and or we had kids that would come to school and say, you know, I'm going to beat you up or something like that, but never did we have anyone bring an armed weapon, you know, to school. After Columbine, all of that changed for the nation. And we started learning words like active shooter, you know, lockdown, lock in, things like that. But I don't think Texas really got hit in the face with it until Santa Fe. And the shooting incident at Santa Fe, and I believe it was 2016 or 17, woke us up. And the governor formed the Texas School Safety Center, which I'm proud to say is housed at Texas State University, which is the main campus for the system of Sam Houston. And they started putting billions of dollars of resources into there. And what's evolved from that is each campus, and charter schools, believe it or not, were not under this until Senate Bill 11, which came out in 2018. Charter schools didn't have to comply to any safety rules. But with that Texas School Safety Center, now every campus has a threat assessment team. And it's not just for active shooters, it's supposed to be proactive. So if you see students that are throwing up red flags, let's do some entourage and get into them before they bring the weapon to school or before they get off the reservation, so to speak. And so I head up all of that for our district as a charter school superintendent. I also am in charge of our school safety committee, which is made up of members of the law enforcement community, a teacher, members of our school board, my principal. I try to bring in professors from the School of Psychology at the university, just so that we can say, okay, here's some issues that we're having. Tell us, let's get all our heads together, because I use a saying all the time, all of us are smarter than one of us. And let's take a look at, these threats that we're seeing, and let's really triage them. I mean, are they significant? Are they, now remember, I only deal with 5 through 12-year-olds, so we're not getting, the significant threats. But, one of the things that has evolved since 2019, and it's played even a more important, I'll talk about the pandemic and its ramifications, but not just students making threats, but students threatening suicide. And as part of our policy, all of our teachers are trained in mental health first aid to recognize the signs of suicide, to deal with suicide. We're really trying to make mental health a priority, and even more than mental health, mental wellness a priority, and saying to our children, it's okay to say you're not okay. There's a stigma that my generation has put on that we're trying to get the millennials and Generation Z and all that group to understand that it's okay if you're having a bad day. Let us help you. Let us get through that. Well, we saw a significant increase in that, even at the elementary level, when the pandemic struck. And in the spring of 2020, we did have to close our campus. We actually were on spring break when the state shut down elementary schools. So our kids never got to come back to school that year, which was sad because our sixth graders didn't get to graduate, and neither did our kindergarten students. But the ramifications of closing that year, we didn't see until actually the beginning of this year, because most of our students in the 2020-2021 school year were on virtual. So let's take, so I can show you, how impactful this closing was. Let's pretend you're a pre-K in the year 2019 and 2020. So at Christmas of your pre-K year, you go home and you don't ever get to come back to school. And then your entire kindergarten year, you're at home and you don't get to go to school. So in the first day of school this year is the first time you've walked into a classroom in a year and a half or 18 months. That was devastating to our children. You're always going to have the mom separation issues with your younger kids, but our older kids were going through it. And then we had older kids that we found their attention spans had greatly reduced because they were used to being on video for an hour and then working on their own for the rest of the day. Or we had students that couldn't sit still. It was hard for them. Had a couple, and I always giggle at this, that couldn't understand why they couldn't wear their pajamas to school. They've been wearing them for 18 months. Why do I have to get up, brush my hair and brush my teeth and comb my hair and come to school? So what we've done this year and the impact we've seen this year is there is a lot more on the social emotional side that we're addressing that we've never addressed before we can even start the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. Right. And we're seeing significant gaps in our lower kids learning, and we're seeing gaps in our upper kids learning, even though our teachers at the charter school did a wonderful job of virtual learning last year. There's something to be said for an elementary student being in the classroom. and you can't replicate those hands-on projects at home. You can't replicate that significance of a highly trained teacher at home. And I think out of all the things the pandemic, if there's anything good it brought, was a better respect from parents about what the teachers are doing.
Right.
Because I guarantee you, I never had a single parent tell me last year, wow, this is easy. I wish we could do it all the time. Most of it was, Dr. Knox, I just didn't know. I am so sorry for yelling at the teachers, yelling at you. I just didn't know. I almost don't like my child anymore after 8 hours a day with them. And so, so that's brought it in. But other good thing, the pandemic's bad, and we're very fortunate in that we didn't lose a single staff member to the COVID, and we didn't lose a single child to the COVID. And unfortunately, I know there's a lot of superintendents that can't say that because they have lost students and staff members. But the pandemic, the thing I love about the American education system is it's very amenable to catastrophe. I think back all the way to World War II or 9/11 or whatever. Throw us a challenge, and it may take us a while to get our ducks in a row, but we're going to come out much stronger. Before the pandemic, I might have had 2% of my teachers that even have heard of Google Classroom or Zoom or digital platforms or anything like that. The pandemic forced us to learn those. And now my teachers see, oh man, I don't have to bring mom in from work. I can leverage a Zoom meeting and we can meet over and do it right then. Or, wow, my kids love all the graphics and the visuals and everything you're doing on video with a Google Classroom. So let's not make that the whole classroom, but let's integrate those resources. Let's go on Google field trips. So, I've got classes that are in Egypt right now, looking around the pyramids and things. Never would have brought that. And not to say that all this wasn't available before the pandemic, but it wasn't a necessity. Right. And the pandemic caused it to be a necessity. And that's what I love about our education system. Give us a challenge and let's move forward. And now I'll tell you, after 18 months of our kids, and definitely our secondary students, of being on virtual learning and learning all the digital possibilities and all the really cool things that can be done with PowerPoints and video clips and making their own things. I really feel bad for those stand-in lecture teachers because these kids are going to expect way more now. They have seen behind the curtain, and they want that. They want to be challenged at a higher digital level and be prepared for the digital jobs that they're going to take, when they graduate. And so if you are a teacher like me that started in the 80s and you're still doing everything paper pencil, not that paper pencil's bad, but you're not going to keep your kids engaged to the level they need to be engaged.
I really like that ownership piece that you're talking about, as well as the evolution and growth. And I can tell I've had the wonderful opportunity to visit your campuses and visit your administrators on the campus and join in and have great talks education wise. One of the things that I wanted to kind of touch on before we head out is I know you do a great job of delegating and advancing leadership in your district. I just wanted you to kind of talk about your philosophy on administrative leadership, as well as imparting and growing those within your district. I know that you've recently have a loss in your district of one of your principals, and I just wanted you to kind of elaborate on how you grow your perspective of educational leadership and administrative leadership from your position as a charter superintendent.
Okay. Well, as I hire and give the final approval for classroom teachers, I only hire people that can lead. Okay. I'm looking for future leaders right at the classroom level. And you go, well, are you looking for people that are principals? No, I'm looking for leaders, because in order to engage students, you have to be able to lead a classroom. You don't have to lead adults, but you do have to be able to lead. Of that, I'm able to look at people and go, wow, that person's got some potential that she or he could actually manage adults. And I think if you ask any educator that's an administrator, there's the real truth is there's not a whole lot of difference in managing children and managing adults. Okay. And I don't mean that facetiously. I mean, it's true. Children want to know that they're cared for, they're safe, that you value what they do. So do adults. I'm cared for, I'm safe, and you value what I do. And so I look for people in the classroom that do that. And then I start giving them responsibilities. And I'm going to use my current interim principal. But before I use her, I want to tell you what my philosophy is. When I hire an administrator, I hire someone that can take my job, has the ability, not right away, but in the future, if I mentor them as a principal, I want them to take my job or move up to another district at a superintendent or higher level. And so that's, consequently, I lose a lot of people with that philosophy because they go on to get superintendent jobs, but that's part of education, and I got that philosophy actually from Nick Saban, who's the Alabama football coach. He has 24 former assistant coaches that are now in the NCAA as head coaches. And if you really care about the program and about the education, that's really our job, to coach them up and let them go out on their own. So that's how I look at my district, is that we're an incubator. We're going to grow leaders, and I'm going to expect them to leave. But I'm also going to expect some of them to take our places. But my current interim principal is a perfect example of that. I hired her in the first year that we opened as our music teacher. And I could tell from the get-go, she's organized, great classroom management, great relationship with parents, and great relationship with staff. Well, that's what you want in your principal. And then the fifth, what I call the intangible, was she was hungry to learn more. She didn't just want to be a music teacher. And so we gave her a robotics program, and she became an outstanding robotics teacher. In fact, our trophy case in our 5 years holds one state champion trophy, and that is our robotics team has a huge trophy because of her leadership and things like that. Well, in year 2, we grew so much that our principal that was being the district testing coordinator needed help. Well, we gave her some of the outlying duties of the district testing coordinator, such as helping organize benchmarks, making sure all of our forms were together, making sure test security was done, that she did so well that we made her a full-time district testing coordinator. So talking about wearing a lot of hats, she's still teaching music. She's our robotics person. Now she's our district testing coordinator. So in year 3, we strove to become a one-to-one digital campus. So we have over 400 and close to 500 now devices, either iPads or Chromebooks or teacher laptops or something. Well, in my thinking, if you know enough about making a robot run, you should be able to turn a laptop on. So I delegated her to be our technology liaison with this university. So my philosophy is I'm never going to overload you, but I am going to expose you. And everyone has a safe word, and it is too much, Dr. Knox, too much. And that's when I say, okay, I need to back off. But she was able to step in. And as we moved into the pandemic, she wanted to learn more about our virtual learning platforms. She wanted to learn about our supplemental intervention programs. So our principal and I were training her on that. Then this year, with all the new legislation on dyslexia and House Bill 4545 and RTI implementation, she learned more about that. So when my principal decided to take a state leadership position, which I am so proud of her because I feel like I had a part in that, prepping her that this organization would see that, hey, she can run a state organization. When she was ready to go, I had someone in-house that knew every program we were doing. And she's been able to step in, and she doesn't know everything yet, but we haven't missed a glitch, and students understand we're just going. Teachers understand we're just going. And that's how I think a district should run. Train up the people that you have. Now, how do you keep from becoming academically inbred if you only choose the people you only know? Well, you bring in outside people as well. But if you're not training your people in your district to be leaders, you're shortchanging yourself. And so I'm a big believer. I'm going to train up. Our principals are going to train up our way. We'll bring in Schlechte. We'll bring in Mentoring Minds. We'll bring in all what the professionals say. But I believe in loyalty. And if a person has been with me for 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, and they have all the tools that I need them to start, then I'll pick them every time. Even over a more experienced, maybe at that time a more qualified person, because I know this person has bled with me for 10 years and they're going to stay and they're going to work us out. And I believe in creating a way. So right now we have the SHSU Charter School way. This is how we do things here. It works for us. It doesn't work in other environments necessarily, but it works for us. And when you come, we want your ideas, but they have to fit into our way, okay? And so I make sure that all our staff understands is when our way is the baseline, I expect you to take risk. I expect you to challenge us. I expect you to go, why are we doing that? And I always tell my staff, and they'll tell you, if he doesn't tell us the why, we get to ask him. Why do we have to do this? Why do I have to be at Cartwriter at 7:45? Dr. Knox, why do you start your meetings at 4:03 instead of 4 o'clock? And I just tell him, well, I start at 4:03 because my God, how can you be late for a 4:03 meeting? That's right. You get here at 4, So that's what I believe in my educational philosophy is I'm training people to take my place. And if they take my place, great. But if they go out and they spread our way into another district, then I feel like we're multiplying what we want for good for kids. And, as an educator, they're not our kids. They're all our kids, because we get probably 40% of the students come from other districts. Mm-hmm. And so I hope that the kids we're sending out to other districts, especially our 6th graders that graduate, are going in and helping that district, not being a hindrance to that district.
All right. And that was such a poignant discussion and great insight into your district and into your philosophy. I really appreciate it, Dr. Knox. I think we're coming a little bit up on our time. I just want one more time to say thank you. I really appreciate your time, your dedication, and the ability, as I've had the wonderful opportunity to kind of shadow and then visit your campuses and be a part of your thinking process and decision making process. And I want to say thank you once again for opening your doors, for having the time and opportunity to meet with me today. And I think that this interview, as well as the reflections that'll come from it will reach others and do a great job. So I want to thank you, sir,